Howdy my totallys, always tubular gamers. We're back with, you guessed it, another video. Apologies if I look really sleepy or tired or just out of it. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. I was having a bit of a nightmare. It was about my most disappointing video game ever. And yeah, it just wasn't a fun dream by any stretch of the imagination. And you know what? After having that, I thought I would talk about it. So today, we're doing something a little different. It's going to be story time with Jonathan. We're going to talk about what really is like my most disappointing video game of all time. I've played plenty of disappointing games. I'm sure I'll do a list in the future. But trust me when I say that no game has disappointed me this much. No game has made me this upset ever. Alright, I'm sure at this point you're like, just tell us the fucking game already. Stop hyping it up. Tell us what the game is. Okay. I'll tell you what the game is. The game is Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, released in 2015. Now, if you don't know about this game, be prepared to see some shit. Now, I want to set the stage for why this was my most disappointing game of all time. It's not as simple as, oh, I bought the game and it sucked. It goes much deeper than that. That's why it's getting its own video. Now, when it comes to the Pro Skater series, I would say I'm a pretty big fan. I love those original two Pro Skaters, but Pro Skater 3, man, that is one of my favorite video games of all time. I have so many memories and just so much love for it. And Pro Skater 4 is incredible also. Then after that, we would get the glorious Tony Hawk Underground, also known as Thug, and even Thug 2. Both of those were excellent as well. After that, I kind of fell off the Tony Hawk train. I didn't really mess around with American Wasteland. Didn't really play much of Project 8 or Proving Ground. But what's funny is I still found myself coming back to Pro Skater 3 and 4, especially 3. Like, I really just love everything about that game. When they announced a Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, yes, 5 as in a sequel to Pro Skater 4, I just went, holy shit, they're making another Pro Skater and it's a sequel to one of the best games. Tony Hawk is finally back. This is gonna be incredible. Oh, how little did I know. So the first thing to look at here is that the game was being developed by Robomoto, a relatively new studio at the time. The previous 9 Tony Hawk games, that's from Tony Hawk Pro Skater all the way up until Proving Ground, were developed by Neversoft. So after Tony Hawk's Proving Ground, Neversoft would focus on the Guitar Hero series for a few entries until ultimately being dissolved and merged with Infinity Ward to work on the then Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, that's the 2011 game. And the main developer for the Tony Hawk series would become Robomoto, who would make the Tony Hawk motion games. That's Tony Hawk Ride and Tony Hawk Shred. Those are the games where you actually had to use a real-life skateboard in order to play. I never tried those, at least outside of a demo kiosk, and I didn't really want to play any further. However, after the success or failure, depending on who you ask, of Tony Hawk Ride and Shred, Robomoto would actually make a remake of the original 2 Pro Skaters, known as Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD. Now, Pro Skater HD has been delisted from all storefronts, but I actually bought it way back in the day, and I remember thinking not very good things about it. Now, I didn't think this game was particularly great. There was a few things that I had issues with, but I didn't think it was terrible either. I just thought it was probably the weakest way to play the original 2 Pro Skaters. Okay, so the developers have a little bit of a shaky track record, but it's probably going to be okay. I'm sure they learned from a lot of their mistakes from Pro Skater HD, and they're ready for a full-fledged release. Oh, if only I knew. So Pro Skater 5 was announced, and it was going to be releasing in late September of 2015. Now, let's take it back to 2015. Back then, I wasn't working a full-time job. I just finished high school and was starting college. So yeah, I didn't exactly have a lot of money, and the game wasn't releasing around Christmas or around my birthday, so I couldn't ask for it for a gift, so I was going to have to use my own money if I was going to get this one at release. Now, while I was going to college, I actually did have a part-time job in order to pay for college, some basic bills, and I would usually have a little bit of leftover money. And you want to guess where I worked? You want to take a wild guess where this high school student, now college student, worked at? I worked at fucking Wendy's. Yeah, I actually did work at Wendy's for about 6 months. I was the king of the drive-thru. I almost always exclusively worked the drive-thru. I was taking orders, making the orders, and then handing it out to people. And I'll tell you, that was that was a really humbling experience, but I'm not here to talk about my experience at Wendy's. How does this even play into the story? Let me tell you how it plays into it. So, I was working at Wendy's, I was making a little bit of money, it was like $8 an hour or something, but I was taking some of that money and I actually was saving it. I did have to pay for college at the time, and I've always had to pay for my own bills, but when everything was said and done, I usually was able to get maybe 1, at most 2 new games a month. And so I went, okay, September, I'm going to get 2 new games. I might have to dip into the savings, but I really want both of these. I want to get Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, and I also want to get Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5. Those were going to be my 2 games. I was also really interested in that Mad Max game which came out when MGS5 did, but wasn't in the budget. Well, alright then. I had a game plan. I was going to work my ass off in that drive-thru so then I could get Pro Skater 5 at release, and it was going to be awesome. So fast forward to September 29th, release day for Pro Skater 5. I was all ready to go in on this game. A few days prior, I'd gone to GameStop and pre-ordered it. I put down all $60. I was ready for this game. I went to class that day, and it was actually pretty quick, so I had a shift at Wendy's as well. It was only a 4 or 5 hour day. And I remember it wasn't a great work day, typical drive-through bullshit, man. It was not a great job, but I actually asked them if I could get off early to go to GameStop to go get Pro Skater 5. They said no, and they actually kept me a little later, but I still had enough time to get to GameStop so I could pick up Pro Skater 5. So, went on over to GameStop, and then I left with the game, and I was so excited. I was like, oh man, all those months of shit customers, shit drive-thru, all the grease, all the Wendy's, all the terrible orders, all the idiots in the drive-thru, it was all about to be worth it because I was about to have a really fun night with this game. And then I got home and I put the game in my Xbox One. Yeah, back then I didn't have a PS4. I actually did play on Xbox One for a spell, but I put the game in and it said it had to install a rather large patch. And I was like, okay, I guess we'll just install this really big day 1 patch that's not totally irregular, but it just added more to the anticipation, the hype. I had to wait like another hour for this thing to install, and I was like, finally, I really want to play this game. I've been waiting forever to play this game. I'm so excited. The game finally boots up. And so I finally start playing the game. Now, when I started the game, my anticipation, my hype, my excitement, it was way up here, way up in the clouds, but as I'm playing this game, it's going down and down and down. And as I was playing this game, I never got any more excitement. The more I played of it, the more I was getting this feeling in my chest, and I was like, oh no, what is this? And I very quickly realized what it was. It was disappointment. Now, I don't want to turn this video into a full-fledged review of this game, so I'm just going to keep things simple and say the game wasn't what anybody wanted it to be. The game was wildly lacking in several key areas. It was missing a lot of polish, and it not only felt like a huge step back for the Pro Skater series, but it was just a terrible game. Like, there really was no other way to put it. It was just a horrible, horrible, unfinished, buggy mess that I couldn't imagine anybody enjoying. And the more I played of it, the more I quickly realized that this game, it was just awful. It was a horrible, horrible game. Not only was it not what anybody wanted from a Pro Skater 4 sequel, but it just didn't seem to do a single fucking thing right. Everything from the core gameplay, the skateboarding physics, the graphics, the presentation, the stability of the game. It was just all atrocious. It was some of the worst I had ever seen from a modern game. And this was all in my Pro Skater, a series that I treasure and love. It just immediately felt like this giant insult to anybody that's ever liked skateboarding games. So I remember on launch day, I ended up playing around 3 or 4 hours of it, and by the time I was done with that play session, I was so defeated. I went from incredibly excited that there was a new Pro Skater to slowly getting more and more disappointed before I finally just got angry. Not only was it anger, but it was sadness. How could they do this? How could they do this to my man Tony Hawk, and how could they do this to me? I worked all those shitty days in that shitty fucking drive-thru, going through tons of shit, saving up in hopes of, having a good time with Pro Skater. I was really excited for this game. I saved up a bunch for this game, and this is what we ended up getting. Yeah, I got pretty angry rather quickly. I think it was like an hour or two in, I started getting angry, and I was just like, you're kidding me, right? This is the fucking game? Really, Activision? You really thought this busted, broken mess of a game was acceptable to release and slap the Tony Hawk Pro Skater label on? How? How did this happen? I was just flabbergasted. I was angry, I was upset, I was shocked, and I really didn't see it coming. I didn't think the game was going to be fantastic. I didn't think it was going to be Pro Skater 3 and 4 good. I didn't think it was going to be Thug 2 good, but decent. I thought the game was going to be okay. Like, technology had advanced quite a bit since the last mainline Tony Hawk, which was Proving Ground. I expected the game, to look pretty decent and play just as good as maybe the older ones. But no, it looked worse, it played worse, and it was arguably the worst Tony Hawk game ever made. How is it that this series has been around for like 15 plus years and then we get the worst game in the series? You would think they'd have a baseline established or something like that. Series are supposed to get better and better, not worse and worse until it finally is in the fucking pits. It's in the toilet. The game was in the toilet. I don't know how else to say it. It was absolutely awful, and I was just really disappointed. I went to sleep upset. I woke up upset. I remember going to work the next day, and yeah, I was just borderline depressed. I got home, played another hour or two of Pro Skater 5, and just said, I can't do it. I can't play any more of this. This is depressing. This is sad. I don't want to sound too overdramatic out here, but it is a YouTube video. I felt a little bit of pain physically, like in my chest while I was playing the game. I was just that disappointed by it. I had never been this disappointed playing a new game. I was just so ready to love this game, and it's not a game worth loving. And so naturally, after about 5, maybe 6 hours of total playtime, I took the game out of my Xbox, put it back in the case, and took my ass back to GameStop. I came with the receipt and said, hey, can I get a refund? This game's kind of awful. The guy looked at me, laughed, and he said, no way, buddy, but you want to trade it in? So I went, fuck it, I'll trade it in. How much you gonna give me? And he was like, about 25 bucks. And I went, $25? I just paid $60 for this game yesterday. And he went, but yeah, you opened it, so it lost a lot of its value. You gonna do 25 or not? Good luck getting rid of that game. Everybody knows it's shit. And by the way, that wasn't $25 cash. That was $25 of store credit at GameStop. And so I just went, fuck, okay, I guess I'll take the $25. And so then I looked around the store and went, oh, there's that new Mad Max game. Instead of getting that, I got Pro Skater 5. Let's check out the Mad Max game. So then I went home and played the Mad Max game. And you know what? That game's actually really good. I've always loved the Mad Max game. But this story's not about Mad Max. It's about Pro Skater 5. Now, the entire time I was playing Pro Skater 5, I was recording. Oh yeah, even back in 2015, I was making videos still. I certainly didn't have a big following. I didn't really have much of a following at all, but I still from time to time made videos. I hadn't made a video in several months. I was just really burnt out and I was working at Wendy's way too much, but I got off my ass and I made a video about Pro Skater 5. Yeah, way back 10 years ago, I actually made a rant on just how bad Pro Skater 5 was. And my rant went on and on. I ranted about the game for like 20 plus minutes. And you know what? I didn't delete it. I've actually, just for this video, made the video public. I've put a link in the description if you really want to see my old ass rant of Pro Skater 5. It sounds like I'm talking to a fucking butt plug for a mic. Like the microphone I was using was just terrible at the time. But that didn't stop me. I still got my point across that I hated that game. I was so mad, and I look back now 10 plus years later. And I'm still kind of bitter about it. Like, man, that drive-thru was really shit, and I saved up all that money, all those hours, for such an awful game. And I can confidently say, after everything was said and done, that is the most disappointing video game I've ever played. I've never been so upset playing a game. I know plenty of people have said, oh, what about this game? What about like Aliens Colonial Marines? Or what about No Man's Sky when it released? Or maybe Final Fantasy 13 or 15 or one of the Final Fantasies that people are disappointed with? No. Not even close. Nothing comes close to how disappointed I was with Pro Skater 5. Like, that feeling I had, I'm never going to forget it because it was just a level of disappointment that I never, and I mean never, want to have again. I've only had that feeling, that level of disappointment a few times in my life. I remember in like high school, or maybe it was middle school, asking a girl out on a date, getting totally rejected because I was, quote, weird and liked video games too much. That was disappointing. I remember getting laid off from Insomniac. That was another level of disappointing. And then Pro Skater 5. It really is just one of the worst things that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I know you might be thinking, wow, your life must be pretty good then. Maybe it is. Or maybe the game really is just that fucking shit. You ever think about that? Either way, I hate that game. I hate Pro Skater 5. It might be like my most hated video game of all time. It's certainly not the worst video game I've ever played. I've played worse. I've played Superman on Nintendo 64. I've played E.T. and I've played all the way through Ride to Hell Retribution, but I didn't hate those games like how I hated Pro Skater 5. I hated everything about that game, and I still do all these years later. The game was only ever released on PS4 and Xbox One. It never got a PC release, and I don't even think you can buy it digitally anymore. I wouldn't be surprised if the game is shot up in price. All I can say is you should never, ever, under any circumstance, ever consider buying Pro Skater 5. It is... Well, I think I made it pretty clear how I feel about it in this video, but, you know, if you really want to see my in-depth thoughts from 10 plus years ago about the game when I was a lot less refined, I talked into a really shitty mic that, yeah, probably sounded like a fucking butt plug. By all means, go watch it. I don't think the video's very good. I think I've come quite a long way, and that's why, you know, I've gotten any kind of following at all, but it's good to see that, yeah, even back then, I knew it was bullshit, I knew the game was a piece of shit, and I did something about it. At least I warned like 2,000 people, or ever how many views it has, about how terrible the game is. Oh, I'm glad I got that off my chest. I don't know exactly why, but I really wanted to talk about Pro Skater 5 and just how disappointed I was. I've had people ask me before, what's a game you've been disappointed by? It's always Pro Skater 5. Thankfully, that wasn't the last Tony Hawk game. We eventually did get 1+2 on like PS4 and Xbox and PC even. And that game's great. It is everything I've ever wanted from a Pro Skater game. Like, it is maybe the best Tony Hawk game of them all. And this is coming from someone who adores Pro Skater 3, but 1+2 HD, it's a really great game, and it's everything that Pro Skater 5 should have been. But that's it for today's video. Thought I would just tell you all a quick story. I know it's pretty different from what I usually do, but how y'all feel about this? Do you like this format? You like me just talking and looking at you in the camera? Yes, you, the viewer, whoever you are. If you made it to this part of the video, you gotta tell me what you think about it. The code word will also be, I don't know, there's a fucking Porygon. I got a Porygon plushie. Porygon the Pokemon is going to be the code word here if you made it to the end. You'll get a heart from me. That means you made it to the end of the video. You're a real one. Thank you so much. If you have watched any of my videos at all, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. You're the best. I love you. Alright, this is getting a little weird, so I'm going to sign off. Stay safe, y'all. Take care. Bye-bye now. Peace.